At this time, it's my great privilege to introduce the president of West Virginia University, James P. Clements. Dr. Clements. Dr. Clements became West Virginia University's 23rd president on June 30th of this year. Before joining the Mountaineer family, Dr. Clements served as provost and vice president at Towson University, the second largest public university in Maryland. He's a computer scientist and expert in operations analysis. He's been here a very short time, but I can tell you from very personal experience that he is a dynamic, energetic leader, and we are pleased to have him bring his energy and leadership to our campus. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Jim Clements.
Well, good evening. How's everybody doing? Good. This is beautiful. Packed house, standing room in the back. This is excellent to see, and a great night. It's great to be with you. It's also great to see a lot of our students here. So for the faculty members who decided to bring your students, very good decision. They will not be disappointed by what they hear tonight. Let me just say it's a pleasure to be with you, and it's a pleasure to help welcome Dr. Don Panoz this evening. Dr. Panoz, as you know, is an extremely successful businessman whose career provides an example for all of us in this room. He is a shining star. However, there's no one more appropriate to officially introduce him, than his longtime friend and business associate, Mike Puskar. Mike and Dr. Panoz met while serving, as I understand, in the U.S. Army. Nearly 50 years ago, they collaborated to form a company that would provide affordable medications for their patients who needed them. And I've been told, and I need to know whether this is true as we hear the presentation, that it was their love for watching Mountaineer football games that landed the company right here in Morgantown. We're glad, if that's the case, that it happened, but we're glad that you are and the company's in Morgantown. Today, that company, Mylan Pharmaceuticals, is a global powerhouse with more than $1 billion in annual sales and more than 15,000 employees. Mylan is the top #1 U.S.-based manufacturer of generic pharmaceutical products in the world. Headquartered right here in Morgantown, Mylan is also one of West Virginia's most successful businesses and an incredible contributor, as you know, to our economy in West Virginia. Mr. Puskar recently announced his plans to retire from Mylan's board after serving for more than 30 years and chairing the board since 1993. Mike also served as the company's president from 1976 to the year 2000. 25 years is an incredible run. And CEO from the year 2000 to 2002. Let me talk about Mike for a minute as a person and as a giving person. I had the pleasure to have lunch with him last week. And we got to sit down and talk about a lot of things. But Mike, as you know, is known for being a philanthropist. He is a very generous, very giving guy. And if you think about his impact on this state and on this town, it's immeasurable, literally immeasurable. And when we sat for lunch, Mike told me a story. And he said when he was a kid, he used to go to school, but his mother would pack a couple extra sandwiches for him to give to other kids at the school who didn't have a meal. And he said, that's what we're supposed to do. He said, that's just the right thing to do. He said, that's how I'm raised and that's how I live my life. And we're lucky that he has done that. In 2003, Mike made a personal gift to West Virginia University to support athletics and academics of $20 million, personal gift. Mike, as you know, has received numerous awards, too many to name. One of those being the Order of the Vandalia, the highest honor that WVU gives to an individual, and Mike clearly was worthy of that. Mike's generosity, his ethics, his vision, and his drive has made him one of the nation's most successful business leaders and clearly one of our state's greatest treasures. Please help me welcome Mike Puskar.
Been a very lucky man, and I've had a lot of very, very great friends. Don Panoz has been one of my longest friends. He and I have been friends for over 50 years. He and I started Mylan when we were 26 years old, and I was the devil's advocate, and Don was the dreamer. And I tell you that in all honesty, Don was the dreamer. He didn't dream in black and white. He dreamed cinemascope, widescreen, surround sound. He dreamed the big dream. When you say, Don, we can't do that, Don would always say, why not? And I had the pleasure of working with Don twice. We started Milan in 1961. Then Don left in 69. I left in 72. Don started Elan in Ireland. 5 kids. Started the company in Ireland by himself and accomplished what he accomplished through hard work, honesty, and dreams. Don Panoz is a special person. I cannot tell you enough how he dreams. He dreams the American dream, and he adds more to it. He's been successful in so many areas that you and I would only dream about. But he has dreamed about it and accomplished it. It gives me the greatest pleasure and the greatest honor to introduce my friend, Mr. Don Panoz.
Well, now you know why a relationship can last so long. It's because I've always been one to take advantage of the easy marks. I'd just like to say, Mike, it's always special to see you. It's always special to be here. Forget about the audience. We've been down a lot of roads together, and I thank you for your kind words, but I'm just as proud of you and all the things that you've done, and for really saving Mylan in 1976. I'd like to thank Dean Bill Trumbull for inviting me here. I'd like to say a special thanks to the President of the University. It's an honor to have the President of the University come to hear a talk. I don't give many talks anymore, but it's a pleasure, and it's an honor. And thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Dean Trumbull. Trumbull. Also, I'd like to thank Brenda Walker, Mindy Walls, Dr. Jim Clements, and all the people that have helped me and arrange this visit. My wife was supposed to be with me this evening. About 10 days ago, she went and had an MRI on a Thursday. The doctor saw it on Friday, and he operated on Monday. And she had some surgical problems with her spine. She's doing well. She's doing fine. I have 4 lovely daughters, 2 of which are taking care of her while I'm up here. We both look forward to coming here, spending time with Mike and Patty, seeing the ball game, but alas, she couldn't come. So I've had so many people tonight ask about her, and for those of you who did that, thank you for asking. She's fine. Ladies and gentlemen of the university and citizens of Morgantown and friends, I'd like to talk to you tonight about two things. One is capitalism, the unknown ideal, and the other is take time to dream. I'm here tonight because 49 years ago, I took time to dream. And also here tonight is Mike, a friend, associate, brother. Neither one of us had a brother, so we are that, who helped me in this part of my dream make it come true. Now, 1960s when Mylan started, Mike, in November. But in 61 was the year. Let me just divert here a little bit. What was 1960 like? There was no interstates. We drove 100,000 miles a year around the state. We started in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. If you wanted to make a telephone call, you dialed 0. The operator would connect you to Clarksburg or Fairmont or wherever. We didn't have all the things. We put 100,000 miles a year that first year on each of our cars traveling the state, both trying to sell Mylan products and to also sell stock. There was no Holiday Inns. There wasn't any Howard Johnsons. You stayed in a cabin. A couple occasions in Mike and our travels, we actually had to sleep in the same bed. Made a rule that if we could get home by 2 o'clock in the morning, we had to drive home. That was after we slept the first time in the bed. A lot of great experiences, and we went from White Sulphur Springs to Princeton and then to Morgantown, and we did come here because football, and then we realized even that in those days, those tickets cost money, so we had to find a way to make some. I've been fortunate to help also Mike make his dream come true. And that was to make Mylan what it is today. And when Mike had been with me in Ireland for a few years and Mylan was in trouble in 1976, it was Mike that came back and saved it. I can remember that. In June, their quarter lost money. They were on the verge of bankruptcy. He took over in May. He had 1 month. And that was the last quarter Mylan ever lost money. Ever. He's fulfilled his dream. And this town is very fortunate, this community, for Mike's dreams coming true. It is a leader in the state. It is a leader in the industry and has been a great contributor to this community. I also would like to thank probably the person most responsible for us being in Morgantown besides the football, was Jimmy McCartney. He was head of the Chamber of Commerce then. I came up and met with Jimmy and realized that we needed to get to an environment where there was technology and medicine and access to bright young people. And it was Jimmy McCartney that was really the guy who broke, like the trailblazer breaking through the snow, introducing us to the right people. I mean, we were two young guys. Think about it. We were like 28 or 29 then. We were two young guys. We had spent our time either selling drugs or selling stock. You know, we got a securities license in the state. I remember one evening in Hinton, West Virginia, 2 spinster school teachers in their 60s. In those days, we didn't have any printing machines. There was no color copiers. There was no Xerox machines. If we had a presentation, it was like this, in a notebook. And we talked to these 2 women, and you want an impact on your life? When they said, excuse us, after we had made our presentation, we heard one of them go upstairs, shuffle around, and she came down and counted out $2,500 in cash and said, we want to invest in your young fellow's dreams. I mean, we could have been con men. We could have been anybody, but they believed us. We did lie, I'll tell you that. We lied to them. We told them that we thought this company could increase her investment by tenfold. Well, today, well, Mike, we lied. It's 1,000-fold their investment has increased. That's when people put trust in you. Before I go further, I'd like to ask a couple of questions. Would those of you in this room who have heard of Karl Marx please raise your hand? Those of you who have heard of Lenin, raise your hand. Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. Mao Zedong. Adam Smith. Big difference. I think it's a little bit strange that the majority of the people in this room are aware of and know of the people who have been determined to destroy the very way of life we live under. And a few of you, only a few of you, know the people who invented the system we live under. As Adam Smith in the 1770s, who wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations. He was a Scottish economist or an intellectual economist. I think back then they had many titles. They didn't quite know what to call them. But he wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations, and that was the book that started educating our leaders and our founding fathers in the United States in the 1770s about how to create a wealthy nation. And that is why one of the things I'll talk about tonight is capitalism, the unknown ideal. Because obviously a lot of us in this room, and me for a long period of time, didn't understand the impact of a man like Adam Smith. We need to go back in the history because at the time of our revolution, everywhere else in the world was either a monarchy or it was feudalism. If you were in Ireland, and I spent time in Ireland, and you had a piece of land, you paid a land rent. You gave some of your production to the landhold owner. It was the monarchy that gave you your land or your privilege. No one had or had created at that time a productive society. It's a little bit strange that here's this man writing this book in the 1770s, and this was a time when people out of Europe looking at this English colony of the United States, or America then, were finding ways to immigrate here and to become part of this. It was just a colony of the British Empire. After he wrote The Wealth of Nations, there were other Scottish philosophers who took up his cause. Ironically, Stuart and Hume came here, and guess what? They were the tutors for such people as Alexander Hamilton, Monroe, Ben Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson. It has to be. How could a country, a colony, no experience, no knowledge of creating wealth, only being subservient, how could these men all of a sudden come up with an idea and a concept and put it into play in such a short period of time, and on the basis of our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our Declaration of Independence, they and their thoughts and what they put in those documents enabled this to be the richest country in the world. And from that capitalism as a banner, those lessons went around the world. And it is the production and the earning of wealth that has helped a lot of other countries. It's saved famines. It's created new countries, and other countries have followed the idea of capitalism. It demonstrates how self-interest, and that's what it is self-interest. I'm not trying to kid anybody. It emphasizes how self-interest, a division of labor, the function of free markets, and the international implication of a laissez-faire economy how it can do that much to not just do what we have accomplished in this country, but to be a bright star in the sky for other countries who wanted to improve their economies, because they too had to leave from colonialism. They too had to leave from a monarchy. It demonstrates how self-interest guides the efficient use of resources in a nation's economy. And guess what then? Public welfare becomes a byproduct of that success. Because if you don't have that money, if you haven't earned that wealth, how can you share it? I just talked a little bit about this current stimulus package that we've passed recently. $700 billion. 10% of it's been spent. The stock market started to recover. A lot of people try to take credit for that, but I think it was the small businessmen, the hard workers, the people dedicated to live and save and work in tough times. That's why we have a recovery. 90% of that money hasn't been spent. And here's the other thing. They tell us that that's going to be a great debt and a great burden on our children and grandchildren. So let me understand this now. That 10% that hasn't been spent, that 90% that's there, they say we owe it. We and our children and our grandchildren are going to owe that money. Well, I say, well, if we're going to owe it, why don't you give it to us? Let us owe the money we got. How quick would this recovery be if everybody had tomorrow their share of that $670 billion and could start spending it tomorrow? That program they have says they're not going to spend it for 7 years. And I'm saying, if we owe the money, if you owe it, you didn't agree to owe it, they've just told you you owe it. If you owe it, your children owe it, why don't you get the money? So, how about that? Why don't they give that to us? Going back to Adam Smith, his simple explanation that self-interest and hard work and free enterprise enables profit from a free market, which creates wealth. And again, this is what establishes public welfare, because you can't do it without it. Does this make sense? Could maybe our politicians have it backwards? I mean, is it that they want to be the benevolent earner of your admiration by giving your money to somebody else? No. You create the wealth, you work for it, you earn it, you do it in an honest fashion, then you have something to improve the lives of everybody else. Just like Mike Pushkar's done here in Morgantown. That company earned money. It employed people. It's been a great contributor to the benefits of this town and community, from football stadiums to God knows what else he's done. He never tells me about these things. But it is a validation of Adam Smith's philosophy in 1770 and those stewards of his that came here and educated our founding fathers. A little-known part of American history is written by a book. Ironically, his name is Roy C. Smith, the author, and his book is Adam Smith, The Origins of the American Enterprise. So I'm not going to go on about this ad nauseum. I just want to say, now if I've piqued your interest, get on Google, you students, get on Google, Google Adam Smith. And you're going to find a whole list of things you can read and find out about what really created our country. Well, I mentioned at the beginning of this talk that my subject was capitalism, the unknown ideal. And by the way, here's the book. And I have 100 of them back there outside the exit doors. And they're for you to take a copy if you want. It was written by Ayn Rand. And there's also a box out there beside it that says Chestnut Mountain Ranch. So if any of you see that there's any value in this book, put what you think that value is in the box for the Chestnut Mountain Ranch. which is a fabulous organization, which my wife and I supported a similar thing in Georgia called the Eagle Ranch for abused and abandoned children. It teaches family structures. It takes care of them, provides a home, provides safety and comfort. So for those of you who think it's worth something, put the money in the box. I will sign books out there, but as a pure capitalist, I can tell you, I'm not signing any books for anybody who didn't put any money in the box, okay? I'm not going to bore you anymore about the history of communism and socialism, or the isms as I call them. We've already had that discussion in the first questions I asked. It's very obvious. There's a great division about understanding and knowledge of what really is capitalism. And that's why I thought this book would be good. We like to make a couple other things about the current state that I've been watching. Healthcare. President Ronald Reagan said a very good quote. He said, "It is impossible to socialize doctors, hospitals, and care without socializing the patient first." We are here, a stone's throw from West Virginia University's medical school. Most of you will know of or know about doctors or want to be doctors that are going there. We know the hardships they go through. We know the tremendous dedication they make to study. For those that are married, we know the tremendous sacrifices their wives make to make sure that they get through school. And the hardship that they have faced to get that degree. First of all, I want to ask you, how do we justify classifying from some politician who says, in this bill, and remember this bill in the House, 1,000 pages, which says, all doctors, regardless of specialty, will be paid the same. Come on. You're going to go an extra 4 years to be a specialist, and you're going to be told that you're not going to make any more money than the guy who went 4 years less than you? That you're not going to make any more money because you know how to deal with a delicate brain tumor versus a general practitioner? How many will do that? This simple madness, that little bit in the health care bill, at a time when we are told we need, well, until yesterday it was 46 million, after last night it's now 30 million people to be taken care of. I think it's part of that little theory that goes in about success and mediocrity. They want to limit success for those who want to study harder to the lowest level of mediocrity for those that didn't want to do the next thing. We have, sake of argument, let's just think about this number of 30 million. Let's just say West Virginia has 2 million residents. I know it's less, but let's say. And we talk about insuring 30 million new patients. So just think about this. I want you to take all the doctors in this state. I want you to take all of their hospitals, all of their nursing homes, all of their laboratories, all their diagnostic clinics. And then I want you to build that 15 times, because that's what you have to do to take care of 30 million people. And they're talking that it's going to happen overnight. It's not going to cost any money. Well, I don't know what they're smoking, but I quit smoking that stuff when I was young. They say they're going to reduce cost. Well, at that rate, they're not going to have enough doctors to take care of these new, our own population, let alone 30 million new. So maybe they'll reduce costs as they won't have to pay the doctors. Medicare is underwater. We all know that it's said publicly 10 years it's going to go bankrupt. The administration says it will because there's waste and fraud. Well, why don't they fix that and make it work before we go off to do a new project? They say that, we we're going to raise more taxes. Excuse me. Okay, they're going to cut $500 billion out of Medicare. They're going to raise more taxes on everybody else. Who pays the taxes? Guess what? I'm looking at you. You, here in this room, you're going to pay those taxes. And I don't see how they're going to do that. They say they want to do all of this, but one of the biggest single costs in health care is the fear of lawsuits, liability. Some doctors pay $100,000, $150,000 a year in liability cost. So why don't we have tort reform? How much is a life worth? Is there a rationale for it? Can you say it's a multiple of or something? But, if that comes to $3 million and then a $500 million penalty, it doesn't make sense. And that's where your costs are, because doctors, because of this fear, will do every test, not the ones they think are necessary, but they will do every one just in case that they won't get caught. And that's where a lot of your costs go. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about once upon a time. Once upon a time, here in Morgantown, West Virginia, where there was doctors that I knew then. I came here in '65. I had 5 children, so I got to know doctors. You will when you get 5 kids. Guys like Herbert Rich, George Curry, John Dempsey, John Fulmer, doctors that I knew. Let me describe to you what it was then. There was a doctor. He had an office. He had a receptionist. He had a nurse, maybe 2 examining rooms. He was acquainted with you and your family, was reasonably aware of your financial circumstances. He, in some cases, would accept a cut of pork, some canned jars of fruit, or canned vegetables in payment for his services. Very rarely was any of his accounts ever submitted to a collection agency. He was a pillar of the community. It could only be on the staff of a hospital if he donated a morning a week, free of charge, to take care of indigent people. That's what the doctors did. And that, in 1965, was how indigent people and people on welfare were taken care of. Well, let's look at it today. Today he has an office, he has a receptionist, he has maybe 3 or 4 nurses. He has 5 to 10 people filling out forms, 6 examining rooms. I wonder where the costs are. I wonder where the lawyers are. Well, as I said, once upon a time, that fairy tale was true right here in this town. This was a novel age when people were responsible for their own actions. When we talk about growing a prosperous nation, we usually do that in terms of reference to common sense. The government today has major influence and control of our financial institutions, our auto industry, and now they're trying to control 16% of our economy, the healthcare industry. The most telling sign of the direction of our government is going in was that in passing that stimulus bill, they tell you you owe the money and they want to spend it. And then they tell you they can't spend it all for 7 years. With me, you're going to get your check tomorrow, and you can start spending this country out of a problem. We were told that we weren't going to have any pork in any legislation. We were told that everybody would have a period of time to review every bill presented in the Congress. Well, let's see. Bill was written at 12 o'clock at night, was passed by 11 o'clock the next morning, was 1,200 pages. Everybody admitted they didn't read it. It had 3,000 allocations for pork, and in the urgency to do this so quick, the president took 4 days before he signed it, so I don't understand the urgency. Everybody could have had a chance to see it for 4 days. And now what is the chant we hear around the country? People say, read the bill. They're telling our representatives and our politicians, read the bill. This health care bill is 1,000 pages. Read the bill. Some of the things I know, I picked out in little paragraphs like this out of 1,000 pages, and they did talk about death consultation in the House bill. They did talk about paying doctors the same. They did talk about punishing them if they didn't have good service or they had to come back. So it's there. And that's why the people who have taken the time to read it, they say, read the bill. They don't want us, that mindset doesn't want you, they don't want us, they don't want me to have control of our money. The government doesn't like it when Mike Puskar builds a stadium. That senator would rather have the concept that he got it done by taking money from somebody else. Mike Puskar contributed to build that stadium. Bureaucrat didn't. Political party didn't. Mike Puskar did. How did he do it? After the people had made 1,000-fold on their investment in Milan Laboratories, after he had paid all the staff, after he had paid the bills and the utilities, after he had paid the union wages, after he paid their Social Security, and then as an owner from his dividend, he paid to build that stadium. No politician did that. Our current politicians have a fear of the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution. Because based on those concepts, and that was all done by the basis of understanding to create a nation, you had to take and be able to use its resources to create wealth, and that vehicle was capitalism. And in today, in its pure form, and the book is there if you want to read it, it is capitalism, the unknown ideal. As I said, I brought 100 copies. They're outside. Welcome to take one. But if you feel that it would be worthwhile to donate to Chestnut Mountain Ranch, I'll be glad to sign your book. Well, now comes a special time because I had an opportunity. Thank you all for being so patient for me to get some things off my chest and to talk about things that I've seen around the world. But now we come to a special part. Taking time to dream. And this is kind of what dreams are about. Or they were. There they go. Some of them float, some of them bust. Some of them make it to the floor, some of them won't. And that's dreams. As I mentioned at the start of this program, one of my dreams was Mylan Laboratories. But alas, I've had the privilege and blessing of many dreams in my lifetime. Some of it have been nightmares. I'll admit to that. But taking time to dream is really important for you. Regardless of whether you agree with my comments in the beginning, whether you are a supporter or non-supporter of that, whatever your station or philosophy is in life, I can tell you, you must take time to dream. And then you must do something else. You must take the time and the dedication to make your dreams come true. All of us have had the experience of a burst of lightning, that bright flash, that idea, that concept. Bringing new ideas, new thoughts. Why? Oh, maybe that would work. You have ideas that become new and novel. And as you take time to make your dreams come true, the biggest obstacles you will face are going to be this way. They're going to be from your friends and confidence. It's off the wall, they will say. You can't do it that way. It's not been done before. How can you do this when the experts can't do it? Well, that was my experience when I left Mylan to go to Ireland to create Elan Corporation. I had an idea of improving the use of drugs, making them better absorbed, more efficient. And the drug in question at the time was tetracycline hydrochloride, a very common, well-established antibiotic. My own board here at Mylan, this is not any castigation, it's the facts. My own board said, how can you do that? The big pharma companies can't do it. What about the FDA? How will they react to this crazy idea? What will they require for approval? The fact is, they had a point. The FDA said, well, we know it's tetracycline. It's been on the market so long, the patent's almost ready to expire. But if you're going to do this, you have to prove it's an antibiotic all over again. That is a tough mountain to climb and very expensive. My dream was starting to look like a nightmare. Staring me in the face was my we don't buy it board of directors and the U.S. government. But on my side of the ledger was that the technology made sense. And I had another hidden asset. My wife and 5 children who were committed to making my dreams come true. Well, 40 years ago, I packed them up. We set out to Ireland with an idea. A developing country at the time, out the edge of being a third world country. But Ireland had 2 important values. It had a pragmatic regulatory officer, and it had thousands of bright young people. Being educated in Ireland was the biggest usurper of the government's budget, but 80% of those bright young people from 3 different medical schools, 2 schools of pharmacy, places like Trinity University, University College Dublin, 80% were leaving the country every year because they had no job opportunities. Not so different than here in West Virginia many years ago. Well, since the experts told me it couldn't be done, I didn't need experts. Those bright young people were fine with me. Since the government said, and the regulatory, the regulator, the top regulator, told me that if I designed a program that could do it, and within these guidelines, she accepted tetracycline was an antibiotic. If I could prove it in pharmacology studies, it was a go. So guess what? 24 months later, I had my first product approved. Tetracycline, half the dose, half as often. 500 milligrams a day instead of a gram a day. Take it twice a day instead of 4 times a day. I licensed it to Organon Laboratories, my first licensee. They did clinical studies and showed that it greatly cut down side effects. And then I could sell it in Europe. I could sell it in the third world countries. And I had the beginning of a country. So like Mike did at Mylan, my wife and kids, young bright professionals, and a common sense regulatory body helped me make that dream come true. Well, here's the numbers. I started that company with $150,000. That's all I had to my name. In 1981, it became the first Irish company to ever be publicly traded in the United States. And when I retired in 1997, it was the richest valued company in the Republic of Ireland at $5 billion, bigger than the banks. That's a dream come true. The big lesson here is we are not an island. We're not stuck out there on our own. We need support. We need encouragement. And yes, some luck to make your dreams come true. But you need to do your homework. For you younger people here, I'm telling you, do your homework. You need a plan. And it needs to be supported by your economic circumstance. Nobody else's, yours. You can go out like Mike and I did and sell shares later, but you got to have something worthwhile. Well, I've had other dreams, things like creating the Saracen World Open. That was one. Talk about equality, which is one of the underlying principles of golf. This Saracen World Open was based on the idea that every country's Open champion should be treated the same, and that nationality didn't make a difference. In other words, the Bermuda Open, the Nigerian Open champion, the U.S. Open champion should all be treated the same. Gene Sarazen said, it's the score on the golf card that counts, not your nationality. And it was a great success. Ernie Els won the first one. In 1994, you never heard of Stuart Sink, Padraig Harrington, Lee Westwood, Jeff Ogilvy, Retief Goosen. These were some of many golfers. A.K. Choi, these were some of many golfers that started playing their career in that famous tournament. Other dreams I had was to build a front-engine prototype sports car. Hadn't been done in 36 years. We did. Based on my son's, if you saw the car outside, based on his involvement in building sports cars, we built prototypes. We competed with Audi, we competed with BMW, all the top ones. We won 8 championships. It hadn't been done in 36 years. After that, we created the American Le Mans Series and Petit Le Mans, which is the 3rd largest sports car race in the world, which will be in 10 days' time in Georgia at Road Atlanta. I noticed that in Indy racing, Indy cars, open wheel racing, all the cars were being built in England or Italy. I built a factory in Georgia. In 1999, we started building Indy 500 cars, and we won 3 of them, 3 Indy 500s. Created the American Le Mans Series, which races 12 times around the country. So that was a dream that happily came true. That replaced 20 years of export money or import money from this country to England and Italy for their open wheel cars. And I had other dreams, unique dreams about resort conference centers, how to really build them, and golf courses. And I have one in Atlanta, and I built one in St. Andrews in Scotland, quite successful. When I say successful, we can measure money, we can measure profit, that's good. You have to have that to continue a business. But when I say successful, I mean that to start out in Scotland as what they call a newfie or a newcomer, against the Old Course Hotel, Turnbull, all the major flag hotels, to open that resort the same year as the hoof and mouth disease, if you remember the animals all being burned, the dot-com failure, 9/11, and SARS. That's the year we opened. In 2 years, for 5 years in a row, voted the best hotel in all of Scotland. Our general manager received an OBE for being the best general manager of hotels in the United Kingdom. That's the order of the British Empire from the Queen. And don't forget, we were there against the Sheratons, the Hiltons, the Four Seasons, and the cast of characters from Scotland who had their own favorites, but we won it. I've been blessed to be a dreamer. Mike stole my words. I do. I dream in Technicolor, 3D, stereophonic sound, and I can visualize from start to finish what it's going to take to make something happen. I've been blessed. And there are some of you here today that will also be blessed. To you, I say, get on with it, okay? Get on with it. One of the sayings that caught my fancy is that life is like a pinball game. You need to win the first one to play the second one. Think about it. You don't win that first one, you're not going to win the second one. And also think about this. Margaret Thatcher said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of the other people's money. Here this weekend, the Mountaineers will need to win this game so that they can have a chance at the championship, the national championship. So, my friends here, take time to dream. Let's dream, and let's get on with it. Thank you very much.